Check out the Lurie Bell interview up on Fret 12 as well as the performance footage we have of him, and keep your eyes open for a Carl Weathersby feature coming soon. I wanted to ask you, Tom, as a DJ, if you had to pick some of your Desert Island Blues discs and your Desert Island Blues guitar discs.
Yeah.
We have a lot of viewers out in the guitar world here at Fret 12 that are just getting into blues, might not be familiar with a lot of the nuances and a lot of the lesser known names. So maybe you could help them out with some suggestions.
I don't know. The Desert Island question just kind of freaks me out because I've been in radio now since 1973, and part of the job of being in radio is always listening to new music. So when I think about albums that I've listened to over and over again, it's only the albums that I had before 1973. I don't really feel like I have the luxury to keep listening over and over to albums. I'm always listening to the next new thing. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I've kind of gotten to the point where I really like hearing things for the first time, mm-hmm. more than I like hearing them repeatedly. Mm-hmm. And the idea of being stuck on a desert island with just a handful of records, I think I'd just walk into the ocean and kill myself. I don't know.
Let me put it this way then. If somebody was coming to Chicago and wanted to get into the blues, and didn't really know where to start, with your experience of spinning blues records for as long as you have, could you recommend a few of your favorites?
Well, what I'd recommend is going to some of the great blues clubs in this town. Mm-hmm. There's so many of them, and Buddy Guy's is one of them, certainly, but it's just one of them. But I come by here a lot. I was here last night. Sure. Sharon Lewis was playing. She was terrific. But, there's clubs all over town. The Reader always has a good listing. That's a local newspaper in Chicago, and that tells you who's playing where. But there really are at least half a dozen really good blues clubs and full-time blues clubs and a lot of other clubs that have live blues. And I think that's the best way to go about it, is come to Chicago and go out and see some blues, mm-hmm. and get some recommendations from people around town who to see. But you think of Roses and Blues on Halstead, and Fitzgerald certainly, sure. And then Kingston Mines, and then just these great clubs. Space in Evanston has a lot of good music, and sometimes it's blues. And we have such a wealth of clubs in Chicago. We're so fortunate to have so many clubs that are really operated by people who love music, and and they're in the business for that reason. Right. And we're a lucky bunch of music fans in this town because of it. And of course, blues is a big part of that.
Right. Another thing I wanted to mention about XRT, and this always strikes me when I listen to it, is that, it's a major commercial radio station, but you still are going to hear Coco Taylor, or Muddy Waters, or Albert Collins, or John Lee Hooker, or Buddy Guy once in a while, just during the day, thrown in there. Yeah. That's unheard of, as far as I know.
Well, it's something that it didn't seem so surprising when we started out in the 70s, and that was part of rock's legacy. That's where the rock came from, and it all made sense. It's not that. Of course, a lot of what we call classic rock now, the rock music of the 70s, was a lot closer in style to blues too. Mm-hmm. But we started playing those artists, and we've just never quit. Maybe don't play them quite as often as we did in the 70s, but at least every shift everybody at least puts in a blues song at least once a day. And those are really valuable spins too. Those are probably more valuable to the artist or to the club that we might be plugging than a spin on the blues show, because we help to kind of spread the word to people who might not be full-time blues fans.
Yeah. So Tom, I understand you took Jeff Beck out to hear some blues one night when he was in town.
Well, sort of. That's how I like to tell the story, but it's not exactly true. But I was the MC, the radio host of a show that Jeff Beck was doing nearby on the south side of downtown Chicago at the Auditorium Theater. Mm-hmm. And I was backstage, and his management people came into this office where I was with the concert promoters, and they said, Jeff wants to go out and hear some blues tonight. Well, I don't know why it was, but I had just researched what blues was in town. Maybe it was leading up to my blues show on the radio or something. But but I just happened to know everybody who was playing everywhere, and so I wrote down a little description of everybody who was playing at all the different clubs.
Mm-hmm.
He thought the show he really wanted to see that sounded good to him was Big James and the Chicago Playboys at Coco Taylor's bar that she used to have on South Wabash. And the reason he picked that was because there was a band that wasn't led by a guitar player. So there you go. Jeff Beck, the great guitar player, wanted to go somewhere other than that. But Big James is a trombone player, and it's a very horn-oriented band. The big horn section leads the band. Mm-hmm. And so we knew he was going, so we all went with him. And there were like 3 or 4 tables of us. Yeah. At one point, Big James sent somebody over to me and with the message, "Hey Tom, dude, want to play?" So we asked him, "Hey dude, want to play?" No, he didn't want to play. But
that reminds me, I met Jimmy Page at Blues on Halstead back in the '80s, and I was working the door there back then when I was just starting out. And Jimmy came in with a couple friends and sat down right next to me in the back of the room, and great Jimmy Rogers was playing. Jimmy Rogers was one of Muddy Waters' most famous sidemen, one of the legendary 50s-style Chicago blues guitar players, and I was sure Jimmy Page would make a comment. And I asked him what he thought, if he dug the music, and he looked at me and he goes, "Oh, I really dig the harp player."
Well, but there's been a lot of times when special guests have been expected to play at Legends, and that doesn't always work out, although sometimes it does. Stevie Ray Vaughan came by once, and a number of artists stopped by. But during the Crossroads Guitar Festival a couple of years ago, it was a good example of the kind of things that happen. Here's Buddy. He's on the bill at the Crossroads Festival, a big stadium out in the suburbs, and all of these people that are on the bill, they all know Buddy, they all talk about Buddy, so of course Buddy Guy's Legends is packed to the roof every night, everybody thinking, oh, Eric Clapton's going to come in, or this or that, and then all the best local players showed up too, because not just the fans, but the players, because they wanted to have a chance to play with Eric Clapton, so Eric never showed up, and Jeff Beck never showed up, and none of the big names really did, but all the great Chicago guitar players were here, and it was just a wonderful weekend. And Derek Trucks showed up.
I remember that.
Yeah, and Derek was playing, who was he playing with? Gee, I'm spacing out on this now, but it was Jimmy Johnson. He was playing with Jimmy Johnson, and Jimmy Johnson went into Somebody Loan Me a Dime. Yeah. And Derek, that was a song that when Boz Scaggs did it, Dwayne Allman played on it. So Derek Trucks, being so closely related to the Allman family and the Allman Brothers Band, he must have heard that when he was in the womb. And he just played that like I'd never heard anybody play it. It was And I remember mentioning to Buddy after that night about Derek Trucks being here, and Derek was another one of those guys one of those rare guys who could play blues, but he didn't play any of the licks or the notes that you never heard before. I didn't know where he was coming from, and when I said that to Buddy says, he's coming from outer space. So he's a big fan of
Derek's been playing here since, I think he literally like 14, 15. I mean, he was on the road when he was a young teenager, and this was always one of his stops.
And then that was the same summer when Buddy was working on an album that had Robert Randolph on it. Robert Randolph came by, and he was playing on some of Buddy's shows that year. I remember it was one of the January shows, and Robert was there. And Robert's another one of those guys. He'll just play all night till they tell him to stop. That's pretty much what had to happen. Buddy finally says to him on stage after a song, says to Robert, "Don't you have to take a pee or something?" And Robert just got away from his guitar kind of like this and walked off the stage. But he was another artist who's just, not like most others. And Bill Kirchen, I think we mentioned Bill Kirchen when the cameras were off, but he's a guitar player, not a blues guitar player, but someone I admire a lot. And whenever he does a live show, he works in a version of Hot Rod Lincoln, which was the song that he played guitar on with old Commander Cody way back. So he'll do a 10-minute version of it, and he's in his Hot Rod Lincoln flying down the highway and passing people.
Yeah.
Oh, he passes B.B. King, so then he plays some that sound like B.B. King. Oh, he's passing Albert
Yeah.
King, and then he plays some.
Yeah.
So, what's most amazing to me is he can sound like all those different people, all with one guitar
Yeah.
and maybe one pedal,
Well,
and somehow he can change all that sound around.
yeah. Yeah. For those of you who aren't familiar with Bill Kirchen, one of the great telly players, still around today. If you like the chicken picking kind of country rock style, he's on a lot
Diesel
of
Billy, he calls it.
Diesel Billy.
Diesel Billy.
Oh, that's a good name. I love his playing on a lot of Nick Lowe sessions. Definitely check him out. He's a mind blowing telly player.
Yeah.